in infrastructure, into other development activities, one of the primary sources of capital always is the government. So the central government and the state governments have to invest out of their own budgetary provisions, and public investment has to hold the key, particularly when there is an environment of global slowdown. And needless to say that public investment in India in the last few years has significantly picked up. In this regard, we've been helped by the global economic situation, where oil prices and commodity prices being moderate have helped us in accumulating a lot of savings. And therefore, instead of squandering away those savings, we've partly passed on the benefit to the consumer so that even inflation is contained. And we've substantially passed on the benefit indirectly to larger public interest by investing those monies into infrastructure.
Correct.
The second source of finance obviously is foreign capital, whether it's external commercial borrowings or FDI. We've liberalized our policy. And there again, there is a beneficial environment as far as India is concerned. Beneficial because of two reasons. Most countries in the world are either not growing or growing at a very modest pace. Compared to them, we have a much faster pace of growth. And therefore, when the world compares possible destinations of investment, they do find India more attractive. And to grapple with the global situation, countries have used unconventional policies like negative interest rates. Compared to that, India gives far better returns. And therefore, on the second front also, we are amongst the countries which is getting a far greater foreign capital into the country. So two very important engines, public investment and foreign capital, on which the economy is firing, are intact. Now comes the third and the critical one, which is domestic investment. And in terms of domestic investment, the situation is still challenging. You have some silver lining in terms of improved urban demand, post a good monsoon and improved rural demand. The festival purchases have indicated that. But it is here that Indian private sector needs to expand in a big way. It needs to invest. And that is when all engines of the economy start firing. And to support that, you need banks to ensure a flow of credit, and you need banks to support the private sector in order to expand this investment. And therefore, the role of banks in supporting growth, particularly as far as the domestic private sector is concerned, is extremely significant. Their credit has to pick up, their investments have to pick up. And we find that in India, in the last few years, the banks have been themselves caught in a difficult and a challenging situation. During the period when global growth was very robust, 2003 to 2008, we had also, through the banking system, lent and lent heavily. And therefore the private sector expanded its capacities. Today it is unable to utilize some of those expanded capacities. And therefore the private sector, either impacted by large capacities which are unutilized, global slowdown, and sectoral stresses caused either by domestic or international factors. It could be caused by international factors as in steel, by domestic factors when there was a stalemate in resolution of infrastructure disputes. And therefore those segments of the private sector slowed down significantly. Their balance sheets got very badly disturbed. And the stressed balance sheets of this private sector in these segments started impacted on the balance sheets of the banks itself, because they were unable to service their loans, and therefore the banks have come under stress. It is this situation that we are faced with. And therefore it is not a usual judicial or a quasi-judicial procedure where endless opportunities have to be granted to people to defend cases. Because if natural justice is carried on to unnatural extents, then litigations will become unending. And therefore efficiency has to be introduced into the recovery procedures as far as the defaulting parties are concerned. So every case that we manage or a litigant manages to delay then hurts the larger investment environment in the country. Because if monies of banks are blocked with some defaulters, it prevents the banks from funding thousands and lakhs of others who otherwise could have utilized this investment more fruitfully for the benefit of the country and the economy as such. And therefore the approach of the government has been, the RBI has been very proactive in this. It's come out with different circulars, different policies, giving a lot of flexibility to the banks to restructure debt, change managements, and take various steps. The government on its own, besides the insolvency law, we have made amendments to the Sarfazi law, the DRT laws, and we've cut short procedures in order to add efficiency to the whole system. You know better than me because you administer that law, that really, in bulk of the cases where banks' dues have to be returned, the defences are frivolous if not sham. They are a time-gaining device. And therefore, the more we are able to delay them, the more we are preventing that recovery, and the more we are preventing that recovery, we are preventing that investment to go into more fruitful hands where it could be used for better economic activity. And therefore, I think it's extremely important that we are sensitized that these are not ordinarily cases. We have 95,000 of them pending before the DRT. The government also has a responsibility in improving the infrastructure, and I'm sure the department will be concerned with this. And therefore we have to really add teeth to our functioning and with great efficiency bring down these areas and to ensure that these recoveries do take place. If we do that, I think it's not merely a judicial responsibility, but the larger interest of the economy also that we will be subserving. And I'm sure the object of today's conference will further this particular prospect. Thank you very much once again. That's all I had to say in today's meeting.